Hey guys, in this lesson I want to go ahead and continue working on graphing some of these trig functions, sine and cosine. Okay, and just making sure that we're practicing and understanding how to do these. Okay guys, so just the more we do it, the better we'll get. So let's go ahead and try and work some of these out. If you are having trouble, go back to the first video, take a look at that one. It goes into more detail. But if you've been following along, you'll be able to understand just how we're doing this. So the first thing, you're probably not going to have this. You're just going to have this, okay? And your professor's going to give you this. So what do you start with? Okay, once you draw your x and y axis, okay, you start off with the midline. What's your midline? Is this number that's by itself. Sometimes it'll be out in the front. Usually it's out in the back. So this guy by itself, positive 1. So here's 1. Cool. So now let's go ahead and draw. Positive 1 is right here. So let's go ahead and draw our new midline. Okay, dot, dot, dot. Okay, nice and neat. Our amplitude. Our amplitude is going to be the number that is in front of the sine or the cosine. So this guy is 1/2. So our amplitude is 1/2. Not very big, but that's okay. Our period, what's our period? Well, our period is defined by 2 pi divided by the b. The b is the number that's in front of the x. So in front of the x, there's a 2. So I'm going to put a 2. I'm going to simplify, so that's going to give me pi. All right, cool. What does that mean? That means by the time we finish one cycle, I'm going to end up with pi. So that means by the time I end up over here, it should be pi. So let's see here. I start off at 0. That makes sense. So 1, 2, 3, that's the first one. First quadrant, 1, 2, 3, that's the second one. 1, 2, 3, that's the third. 1, 2, 3. So by the time I get over here, I should end up at pi. Okay, like that. Well, what about these three? Well, we're going to take this period, pi, okay, and you're going to divide it by 4 because there's 4 quadrants or 4 sections. And basically that's it. So we're going to count starting here. Pi over 4, that's the first one. Then the second one is 2 pi over 4. The next one is 3 pi over 4. And the last one is 4 pi over 4. Okay. Lastly, let's do a horizontal shift. And the horizontal shift moves it left and right. And that's going to be guided by whatever's inside the parentheses. So let's go ahead and just solve that. So we're going to get 2x minus pi. We're going to set that equal to 0. We're going to solve it. So that means 2x is equal to positive pi. Divide both sides by 2. We're going to get pi over 2. And that's it. Now, because it's a positive, we're going to move it pi over 2 units to the right. So now we can go ahead and start graphing. So where am I going to start? Remember, sine starts at the midline, okay? Sine starts at the midline. So right here. So I'm going to put my first point right here. There it is. Now, then you're going to follow the pattern. So you start off at the midline, then the first I guess quadrant, by the time you finish the first quadrant here, the first radian here, it's going to go up to the amplitude. So what is 1/2? Well, let's just do 1/2 right here. Let's say let's say it's 1, let's say this is 1.5, and then we'll call this guy over here, we'll call that 2. Okay, so it goes up to 1.5, and then we go down to the midline, and then down to what? 1.5. So we'll just say this here. We're gonna have to, just to keep it balanced, will be right here. Okay, and then it goes back up to the midline right here. So we'll say that this is 1.5 as well. 1.5 up, 1.5 down. And then we're going to do this, here, and there it is. Okay. Now, from here, okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and move it. So pi over 2, we're going to move it pi over 2 units. So that means this is 0. So this guy's going to move pi over 2 units. But if you notice, from here to here, it's only pi over 4. That means I got to move it 2 spaces. Okay. So let's go ahead and extend this here. So this is 3 pi over 4, this is 4 pi over 4, 1, 2, this would be 5 pi over 4, and I ran out of room, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and move this guy. So let's see here. This guy is going to move 2 spaces because this is pi over 4, this is 2 pi over 4. So this guy is pi over 2. So this guy's going to go here. This guy's going to go 1, 2 over here. This guy, 1, 2 is over here. And then this guy, 1, 2 is over here. And this guy, I ran out of room. So it should look like this. Like that. And finish off over there, but I ran out of room. Alright, guys? And that's what it would be like. Alright? That's what it would look like. So let's go ahead and see if we can do the next one. Alright. The next one, same thing. Alright, what do we start off? We start off with our midline. What's our midline? -2. So this is -2. What's our amplitude? 3. Okay. What is our period? 2 pi over b. What's my b? What's in front of the x? It's a 3. Okay, so it's going to be 2 pi over 3. Cool. So what does that mean? By the time I get to over here, I end up at 2 pi over 3. Well, it's going to look kind of weird, but it's okay. So 1, 2, 3, right there. 1, 2, 3, right there. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There it is. So by the time I get over here, it should be 2 pi over 3. Okay. So now, how do I get these three? I got to take this guy divided by 4. Okay, so 2 pi over 3. Remember, dividing by 4 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/4. Okay, so dividing is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal or the fraction. Okay, so what does this become? That becomes 2 pi over 12, or that becomes pi over 6. Okay, does that make sense? So that's how we did. Okay, remember, multiplying, okay, by the reciprocal. So dividing, okay, dividing by 4 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/4. All right, dividing by 4 is the same as multiplying by 1/4. And you get this, you simplify it. So that means this first guy is going to be 1 pi over 6. What's the next one? 2 pi over 6. What's the next one? 3 pi over 6. What's the next one? 4 pi over 6, which is the same thing as 2 pi over 3. Lastly, let's do a horizontal shift. Let's take a look at this guy. So we're going to take 3x plus pi. We're going to set that equal to 0. And move the pi over. We're going to get 3x is equal to negative pi. Divide both sides by 3. We're going to get negative pi divided by 3. Good. So now because it's a negative, we're going to move it pi over 3 units to the left. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Is there something wrong? This is pi over 3. This is pi over 6. Like, what do I do? Well, how do we compare these, right? Well, we're going to have the same denominator. Well, remember, negative pi over 3 is the same thing as negative 2 pi over 6, right? If I multiply this guy by 2, this guy by 2. So now, hey, now I know what to move it by. You see how I did that? I made the same, I converted it to the same fraction, same denominator. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start graphing it. So let's go ahead and do that. Remember, this is cosine. Cosine starts at the amplitude. So let's do our midline first, -2. Let's see here. Yeah, let's do -2 right here. Do. All right, all the way across, all the way across, all the way across, right there. All right, there's -2. So it starts at the amplitude, right? Because it's cosine. So if we're not going to put a dot here. We're going to go count. We're going to count what? 3 spaces up. 1, 2, 3, right there. That's where I start. Okay, and then amplitude. Then what do? Midline, right here. And then what do? Amplitude. So now we go down. We go down 3. 1, 2, 3, right here. And then what do? Back to midline. Back, and then we go up to amplitude. 1, 2, from the midline. You see how I counted that? Right here, right there. Okay, and then we're gonna do that. Okay, and there it is. Now, last thing we need to do is we've got to move it to the left. Okay, so how do we do that? So this is the beauty of this one. So this is pi over 6, right? Okay, this distance is pi over 6. So we got to do 2 of those. So does that make sense? So if you think about it, from here to here, that's 1 pi over 6. So then 1, 2 pi over 6. Does that make sense? You see how I did that? So from here to here, that's only 1 pi over 6. So from here to here, that's 2 pi over 6. So that means I have to move it 2 units to the left. So this guy is going to go 2 units to the left. So 1, 2. This guy, 1, 2. This guy, 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6 right there. Okay. And then this guy, 1, and then 1, 2, 3 would be right here. Okay. And then I got to extend this guy here. So I see 1, 2, 3. So this would be negative pi over 6. And then 1, 2, 3 would be over here. But I'm going to run out of room. And this guy would be negative 2 pi over 6. Okay. And then, so this guy would go 1, 2 right there. All right. So then this guy would go do like that. And then like that. Okay. And there it is. Sorry, a little bit messy, but hopefully you get the idea. So remember, look at what I did. I changed this guy into 2 pi over 6. So now I can compare. And then I know that from here to here, it's 1 pi over 6, right? So from here going backward, that's 1 pi over 6. But I need another one. So I go 2. So I'm actually moving 2 spaces. All right, so let's see if we can do a couple more, just to give you an idea. All right, same thing here. What do we do? What do we start with? Midline. Okay, what's a midline? 1. Okay, positive 1 right here. We start off with our new midline, just dot, dot, dot. Try to stay nice and neat. Okay. Then we go to our amplitude. What's our amplitude? The number in front of the sign, which is 2. What's our period? 2 pi over b, which is whatever's in front of the x. There's nothing in front of the x, so you're going to put a 1. So which is going to give me 2 pi. Okay, which is nice. So now how do I get our 4 sections? You're going to take your period. You're going to divide it into 4 sections. Okay. So then you get, well, let me see here. Pi over 2. Okay. Lastly, take whatever's inside here. Horizontal shift x minus pi over 6. Set that equal to 0. We're going to solve it. Take that negative pi over 6 over, and it becomes x equals positive pi over 6. Great. All right. So we did our midline. What's our period? 2 pi. So that means by the time we get to the end, it should end up at 2 pi. So we start off at 0. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So by the time I get over here, it should be 2 pi. What about these 3? You're going to start off at pi over 2. So this is 1 pi over 2. Then we got 2 pi over 2. And then we got 3 pi over 2. And then we got 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi. Now we start graphing it. Well, what is sine? Sine starts at the midline. So we're going to start right here. Right there. And then we just follow the pattern. Amplitude. So how much are we going to count? We're going to count 2 spaces up. 1, 2 right here. Then we go back to the midline. Then we go down to the amplitude. So from the midline, remember, it's from the midline. 1, 2 right there. And then back to the midline. Okay. And there it is. All right. And so you end up with this beautiful sine wave right here. Okay. Right here. And go back up. Now the last thing I got to do is I just got to move it pi over 6. But wait a minute. Whoa. This is pi over 2. This is pi over 6. How am I gonna move this, right? Well, can I make these into 6s? Yeah, you can, right? So pi over 2, okay, is the same thing as 3 pi over 6. Does that make sense? So I'm changing all of these guys so it could be pi over 6, or 6s. The denominators are 6s. So what about 2 pi over 2? Well, that's the same thing as writing 6 pi over 6, right? Okay, let me change these guys as well. Okay, and then this guy as well. So this guy becomes 6 pi over 6. This guy becomes 9 pi over 6. This guy becomes 12 pi over 6. Does that make sense? So I'm just comparing them so I can have the same denominator. Good. So now if I say, oh, I got to move it pi over 6, oh, that's easy. So this guy, I know from here to here is 3 pi over 6. So that means I only got to move it this little bit. So this is 1, 2, 3 pi over 6. 4, 5, 6 pi over 6. So all I got to do is move it just this little bit here, and I get my correct graph. Here, this guy moves it here, this guy moves here, this guy moves right here, and this guy moves right here. And then so I have this nice, beautiful curve right here. All right, go down, and right there. And that's it. So I think you guys are having a good success with all of this, right? Remember, once you get here, right, wait a minute, the denominators are not the same. So what do? You make them the same. So I had to multiply these by 2 to make them into 6s. So now I can compare them. So now pi over 6, that just means I have to move it one little dot, one little space here. Okay, guys? See if we can do one more. Last one, okay? Midline, same thing. Oh, that's -2. Amplitude, +3. Period is 2 pi over, what would that be? 2 pi over 4. What's in front of the b? I'm sorry, what's in front of the x is a 4, so 2 pi over 4. This is the same thing as pi over 2. Okay, so that means by the time I get over here, it should be pi over 2. So we start off at 0. Let's go ahead and do our midline first. Is -2 right here is -2. Okay, -2. All right, there it is, -2. So now I'll just start counting. So let's see here. This is my 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There it is. So this becomes our pi over 2. Okay. Well, what about our 4 sections? What about these 3? Okay, so take pi over 2, divide that by 4. Remember, dividing by 4 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/4. That means we're going to count by pi 8s. Pi over 8. So this is 1 pi over 8. This is 2 pi over 8. And this is 3 pi over 8. And this is 4 pi over 8, which is pi over 2. Great. So the last thing I got to do is I got to solve this guy. So let's see, 4x plus pi over 2, set that equal to 0. We got to solve it, so take 4x, take that pi over 2 over, it becomes a negative pi over 2, divided by 4, right? Divided by 4. So remember, dividing by 4 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/4. So x is equal to negative pi over 8. Nice. Actually, I didn't have to do much there. Cool. So that means I'm going to move it 1 pi over 8 to the left. So let's go ahead and start graphing it now. So where do we start? Cosine. Cosine starts at the amplitude. So we're not going to start here. This is the midline. What's my amplitude? -2. I'm sorry, the amplitude is 3. Okay? So we're going to count 3. 1, 2, 3. There it is right there. And then follow the pattern. Amplitude, midline. Amplitude, 1, 2, 3. Midline. Amplitude, 1, 2, 3. There it is. And so we got this nice curve right here. Okay, same thing here. Right there. All right, just like that. Now, pi over 8, move it to the left. Okay, so that means that's pretty simple. This is a distance of 1 pi over 8, so I'm just going to move it 1 to the left. So this guy, 1, 2, 3, go over here. So this is negative pi over 8. This guy moves over here. 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 And then, there we go. And there it is. All right, guys. So hopefully that helps. Let me know. Shoot me some messages, and I'll make some more videos, some more examples if you need it. All right, guys. Good luck.